I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. On Wednesdays, we talk about business and economic development in our community. And I'm glad to have here a friend and leader in the space of business development, Brandon Champeau. He is a vice president of United Properties. And we're talking again, we've done this before, about the Upper Harbor development in North Minneapolis. We're also going to be joined, I think she's in the back room, by Dana Frank. Dana Frank is president and CEO of First Avenue Productions, the famed institution, First Avenue, world renowned, and a powerful and wonderful organization. Brandon, good to see you. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since we've talked, and it's always cool from my point of view to connect with you and to get an update on what's happening with the Upper Harbor Terminal project. And let's start as though we hadn't talked before and give our listeners and viewers kind of a Upper Harbor Terminal 101. And so, we have our local audience here with the McFarlane Media Dashboard, but we also have a national audience through Black Press USA. That's the Facebook page of National Newspaper Publishers Association. And to those who are listening either on Facebook locally or regionally or nationally, we welcome your questions, your comments, feedback from you. We enjoy creating a platform for what we call robust discussion. So, Brandon, 101, what's the basic story?
Sure. Upper Harbor, it's a 48-acre site on about a mile of riverfront near North Minneapolis or in North Minneapolis along the Mississippi River. It's a site that's historically been geared more towards industrial use, especially over the last 50 to 100 years. It's been a terminal for water freight and other things coming into the city. And over the last 5 years, our team, including Dana and Devin George now and ourselves here at United Properties, have been involved in a planning process with the city and the community to figure out what the future of these 48 acres should be. And generally speaking, the plan that we are working through right now, or the plan that's in front of the city, hopefully for approval in the next couple months, it includes really, I would say, a balanced mix of places to live, which will include affordable housing and some affordable home ownership options, places for a community, which will include a new park, a community performing arts center, a health and wellness center, and then places for jobs, which will include commercial space, ground floor space that could be retail or other things, as well as manufacturing and production type of space.
You're the lead developer. If you would, Brandon, take a minute and talk about the powerful organization that you represent. I think your company is one of the jewels of the region, possibly of the nation. Sort of do a little bragging about United Properties.
Sure. No, I appreciate that as well. And United Properties, we're a development company here based in Minneapolis. We've got offices in Denver and Austin, Texas as well. And have been primarily focused on commercial and senior housing development for over 100 years now. We were formed in 1916 and are owned by the Polad family here, who also owns the Minnesota Twins, among many other businesses here in town. And we, as I said, have focused primarily on commercial, including industrial, office, mixed use type of properties, as well as senior housing. And what's exciting for us with Upper Harbor, particularly in our partnership with Devin George, is that it's a chance for us to get into more affordable housing, which we do not have a strong history of doing, but that has changed through the course of this project, and we're excited about that. So.
Great. Dana Frank, as I mentioned, is president and CEO of First Avenue Productions. It's Minnesota's leading independently owned and operated concert venue and promoter. Dana has expanded the business beyond its star-adorned walls, the iconic First Avenue building downtown. and she's expanded her enterprise to include the Fine Line, the Turf Club, the Palace Theater, and the Fitzgerald Theater in St. Paul. She's currently working with the public to develop a community performing arts center on the Mississippi riverfront. She's a founding board member of the National Independent Venue Association, and that group is working to secure financial support to preserve the national ecosystem of independent venues and promoters. Dana is a strong LGBTQ plus advocate. She's a 2018 Henry Crown Fellow at the Aspen Institute and a firm believer in community building through live music. Dana, this is our first time talking for more than 2 seconds at a time, but it's good to see you and good to have you in conversation here. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And I want to thank you for being here. I'm glad that you are working with Brandon and the community to create marvelous opportunity, I think, to reimagine what community can be and what it will become if everybody at the table is at the table. Let me introduce you both to my colleague, Brenda Lyle Gray. She writes the stories, so she's my collaborator here in Conversations with Al McFarlane. She's out in New Mexico, I think. And just for fun's sake, Brenda and I went to kindergarten together. And we're both in our 70s now. So we go back a long ways and we intuit a lot just in looking at how the world looks from where we saw it as kindergartners. And it's a fun thing. But Dana, again, thank you so much for being here. It's so good to have this time with you. And I want to start just by asking you to not talk about this development, but about the whole challenge your industry has faced during shutdown, COVID-19. Hopefully you're coming out of it now and people are going back into clubs and live music is going to be around again. But I'd love to get that firsthand story from you of how it looked for you personally with all the venues you have here in Twin Cities and how you and your colleagues nationwide have been able to weather the storm. Some haven't, but hopefully, most will.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having us and having me on. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here. Yeah, COVID was certainly, completely unexpected. Felt like it came out of nowhere, and hopefully we won't have to go through anything like this again. We were shut down. All of our businesses are, they're public gathering spaces. Our business model kind of revolves around putting a bunch of people into a small space and having these communal experiences and giving people those moments that really make life worth living and those like magical experiences and the best times of their lives. And so when you have a disease and the only cure for it is, social distance or physical distance, well, our business can't operate. So we, sorry, I have a
no problem.
But so we, went from, being totally fully operational from, 100% to zero in the course of about 6 hours. Even on that day on Friday, March 13th, we had bands already loaded into the Fine Line, and we had to, we were watching the city and the state and how what mandates they would come down, and finally just canceled everything about 6 o'clock on Friday, March 13th. And we thought it might be a couple weeks. No one really knew what the disease was at that time. Mm-hmm. And we thought wash your hands and clean surfaces really well. That'll solve it. And that obviously wasn't the case. So when it looked like
drink some bleach, right?
Yeah.
No.
So we really, our business is pretty heavily centered around the spring and the fall. So we're okay, we're going to lose our spring, but we'll be up by the fall and we'll take the hit. And then when it started to look like we were going to lose our fall. That's when the industry really came together and pulled together and said, okay, we need some government assistance because either all of us survive this or none of us do. Because also at that time, the bank stopped lending. We had all of, the cash flow is kind of on tickets, on pre-sold tickets. So with all the refunds, it's all your debt was called all the time and you had no revenue. So we banded together. We did a full 50-state lobbying effort. We managed to secure some industry-specific legislation at the end of the year, thanks to Senator Klobuchar, and have been working with the SBA to try to get it out. But it really was, hopefully we'll never have to go through anything
Well,
like this again.
what you did, to your credit, Dana, is rallied colleagues in the industry nationwide, and I think you came up with a national response that really, you're exactly right. Either you save the whole industry or everything goes, and I think you all rose to the occasion and you were successful. The government and industry and the public, I think, heard you and understood you, and all things aligned themselves properly for some support to come that was needed, but also necessary and appropriate. That's what I think. I don't know.
That's probably what I'm most proud of, honestly.
Mhm.
At a time when we could have had members who just said screw you to public health and opened. We were able to convince people, no, like, health comes first. Always at the heart of this, there was a public health crisis, and we had to be closed to protect public health. We never argued against that. We never once were arguing to be able to open earlier. And also at a time when our industry really could have fractured, and it could have become like, acquisition, acquire. I want my, competitor to go out of business.
Mhm.
We really did the pro competition measure, and we all fought for each other. So, if anything, that lasting legacy, thank you for recognizing that
Certainly,
hopefully that will be
certainly.
the lasting legacy of the effort.
And Brandon, I wanted you to, and this is not really on topic, but I think it's just something of general interest, to talk about how something as massive as the pandemic affects your industry. I know that you've got major projects underway around Twin Cities, and it seems like they're still going on, but I wonder, what kind of impacts did you experience either in the planning or the execution of the development calendar that your company has pursued here and in other markets around the country?
Yeah, it really impacted the different product types that we develop differently. We've got a lot of senior housing that we own and manage with partners, and there was a lot of concern about what could happen to senior communities, especially early on, like Dana just said, back in March, April last year, where none of us really knew what the full impact was going to be. We were, very concerned about keeping our senior residents safe, and we were very fortunate to have done that with, very little sickness, and now I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I believe most of our senior residents have been vaccinated, and so we were able to get through that. But it certainly slowed down new senior development, because again, we didn't know if this was going to be a 6-month thing or a 1 year or a 6-year thing, and so we put a number of senior projects on hold last year, but those are starting to ramp up again, and we're still, I think, kind of feeling what the impacts will be on the office sector. A lot of us have gotten used to working, from our bedrooms or basements or wherever we have been. And I'm back in the office here downtown, and have been coming back in much more regularly the last couple of months. But I think, all companies are still trying to determine what the future of work is, and how much they need employees in the office versus doing work at home. So I don't know if we've seen the full, the kind of full impact of that yet. One thing that we did not see any negative impacts to, I would say, was the really in the industrial sector. I mean, all of us, again, changed shopping patterns significantly, and, ramped up our e-commerce buying, and it forced retailers to really scramble and get those strategies figured out. And so we've seen a ton of impact, or a ton of demand on the industrial sector for companies looking for warehouse space, manufacturing production space. That there was a very small kind of pause on that business, and then it quickly ramped back up. So
hopefully we're in for a good ride. Broadly across the economy, things will be different. I think different in a positive way. I look at the challenges delivered to us, the requirement that we rethink and retool that came from COVID-19, but also the George Floyd pandemic, I'll call it, where our communities and neighbors and families begin to look differently at what accountability is. And I think all that goes into an equation that requires and enables us to reimagine a future that is going to be accessible and equitable and I think, bountiful for more people than before. That's what I think. And I think that's why your project is significant and the timing is perfect, because you're developing a model that's inclusive at its core. When I was at one of the early introductions to your project from the city of Minneapolis, I think you were at the meeting, Brian, the city planner who was involved in the project declared that this project is being looked at through a lens of equity. I'd not heard that language before, coming from a city official declaring equity is at the core. So let me ask both of you to talk about how equity shows up and in your vision, in your version of the story. Brandon, we start with you, and then Dana, jump in wherever you want to. This is informal, unscripted, and it's like us talking to each other, but the whole world is watching, and it's fun this way. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say that this project for many years now, and I think I probably speak for Dana on this as well, and I know I speak for a number of the city staff and officials that we've been working with closely, has forced all of us to rethink how development happens, and especially in areas that have had the kind of historic and current trauma that the neighborhoods in North have been experiencing. And I would say that I didn't know that going into this project. It's been something that's been required drinking from a fire hose and learning and really trying to understand. But for me, equity in development really comes down to having community partners and community members at the table with us every step of the way. We don't typically do that. I mean, a lot of projects, and I'm not just speaking United Properties, I'm just speaking of the development industry in general. Mm-hmm. A lot of projects are planned, envisioned, by the development team, which includes us and our designers and our engineers and whatnot, and then kind of brought out to a neighborhood group or whatever, and then a small negotiation happens there on minor changes and things. But it's a very transactional kind of I would say interaction with community, and a lot of times economics win out on what's going to end up happening there. Mm-hmm. In the case of this project, we learned a few years ago that couldn't be the case, that we had to really stop trying to just impose what we thought was the right thing to do, and really stop and listen and understand what the community needed and what they wanted, and then try to balance that kind of current need with future aspirations, and then do it in a feasible and implementable model, because at the end of the day, we still do need to get to that point. But I would say for us, the project changed, and I would say my definition of equity in development really changed when we started bringing community members into the planning process and bringing partners in who understood and had the background that I didn't have personally. And until that happened, I think there's a reason why we were sort of spinning our wheels for the first couple of years on this, in my opinion. So,
Dana, jump in from your point of view. How does equity appear? And I'd love to know how the First Avenue organization connected with Brandon and United Properties and other elements of community to move this idea forward.
Yeah, so I mean, much like Brandon just described, I think this project really evolved given community feedback and partnerships, evolving over the past 5 years or so. And it certainly doesn't look anything like the initial RFQ response we submitted. And it's been just really the most, humbling and amazing experience. And it's been really just a highlight of my life to be involved with. So, how equity shows up, how I think about it is, we really took a look at this amphitheater from every dollar in and every dollar out, and said, okay, how do we use those revenue streams and those expenses to benefit direct and current Northside communities. Knowing that a huge fear was gentrification, we said, okay, we want to build this so that it's inclusive and it's welcoming and it's benefiting the current Northside residents. And so we took a look at, literally every dollar that came in and said, okay, how do we direct that to Northside? And said, oh, wow, there's an amazing emerging Northside food ecosystem. Well, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people coming to this site. The one thing every new business or every entrepreneur needs, after space is customers. We're like, okay, so how do we introduce the city people that might be coming here to see music? How do we introduce them to these awesome food vendors? And maybe they can discover businesses that they'll then continue to spend their money at even after the day of the show. Okay, well then, tickets. So we can't, music is subjective. I wish I could sit here and promise that every single band coming to this amphitheater is going to be beloved by every single person. Like, it's just, you can't,
Not going to happen.
it's just not going to happen. I really, I'm proud of our First Avenue and Palace and Fitz lineups. There's something for everybody,
Yeah.
but not everything is for everybody. So
Right.
we're like, okay, well, knowing that there might be some music here that people don't like, but how can we make sure that every single person coming to this site is giving money to the community? So we put the ticket fee on. And then we took it a step further and said, okay, well, we're First Avenue, we're local, we're downtown, we've been downtown for 50 years, but maybe we're not the right people to determine what the public programming should be and what the right music is for current Northside residents. So we're just going to direct that ticket fee to an organization that can fulfill it and make the programming, the free public programming, welcoming and inviting to Northsiders. So then you look at money out. So we're like, okay, all of the employees that we hire, how do we make sure that we're, not just promising zip code priority hiring, but we're actually going to find people and build the capacity of people in the neighborhood to fill these jobs. So we started, right before COVID, like a career pathways program. We're like, okay, we're going to have, probably 50 to 100 prevailing wage, stagehand, union jobs. But how do we make sure that the current Northside is trained? So we're going to start building the capacity now, potentially 2 years before it opens. And the summer employment at the amphitheater might not be, family sustaining, but hey, there's a lot of youth that could really use this $5,000 to $10,000 over the summer to support their higher education and to help, bring money into their households. So how do we make sure that? So, working with youth education. So that's how equity shows up in the project to me. It might not be, easy to describe on paper, but the overall program is, you see an amphitheater picture, but then you look at how it operates and every single element is designed to benefit directly and indirectly current Northside residents.
So amphitheater says outdoors to me. What's the year-round entertainment value and proposition your program offers?
Yeah, so it's in the state bonding requirement that it is 4 season. So, but that's also one of the things where we're going to work with the community. What is most valuable? How do we use this space to complement current Northside assets? We don't want to recreate, right? So like, you have an amazing Capri Theater that just went through a capital campaign and renovation. We don't need another Capri Theater on this site. So we're going to work with the community, say, okay, what are the late fall, winter, early spring needs? Is it an ice skating rink? Is it a sledding hill? Is it like, how do we make sure that this is activated? Because that, unlike a traditional developer, we're an operator. So like, we're going to build it and we're going to be there every day. So it's better for everybody if what's built on this site is utilized and not what's our vision or my vision, but actually the community vision, so that we make sure that people use it and it is the most valuable property it can be.
Brandon, you all are inviting the community to give comment. You've got I think an event or a period of comment, Terry, coming up. Talk about that. I know you're running ads in my newspaper for the past month. Thank you for the business. I think it's the right thing to do. Do more, and we appreciate the chance to partner with you and to serve your intent to ensure that our people get the information. But what is the phase right now that you're in that you're asking people to respond to?
Yeah, so since early June, we've had what we are calling a community partner, community entity expression of interest document that is on the City of Minneapolis's website for the project. And this this came out of the planning process that we've been involved with for the last couple of years with the UHT CPC, which is the Collaborative Planning Committee that we've been working with, which is a dedicated group of community leaders and members that have really put countless number of hours into this project for 2 years now. And what they essentially asked us to do was to, as part of this discussion around equity, making sure that once that committee disbanded or was no longer kind of at the table with us, they wanted other community partners to be there. And so we are actively seeking those partners right now through this expression of interest process. And the goal here is to find really help us find partners to fill a couple of key roles. One, as Dana mentioned, is a group that can take these, what we're calling community funds, the First Avenue ticket fee. Also, what we're working through, it still has to be approved by the city, but there will be annual ground lease payments that are made for all the projects that are here. Instead of us acquiring the land, we'll be making a payment to the city every year to kind of continue to operate our buildings on that land. And this group would also be responsible for making recommendations to the city on where to direct those funds. Again, this is something that still has to be approved by council, but normally we would just pay those funds and they'd go to a city general fund or whatever. But the CPC has recommended that those funds be redirected back into community initiatives, particularly around anti-displacement and gentrification efforts. So that this community fund manager would be responsible for helping make recommendations on that, in addition to deploying the funds that Dana will be generating from the CPAC into local programming and things. And then we are also, it could be the same group that does the fund management, but Dana mentioned, having a community partner that helps with that local programming, and on those local programming nights, when First Avenue isn't the operator of the facility. So that's another key role that we want to fill. And then the third is what we're calling a private development real estate partner. And that could be a group that eventually owns parts of the project or buildings in the project. It could be a group that helps us program and lease those spaces to make sure that, we're not just putting in any typical tenant or whatever, that we're being active in seeking community tenants and putting in the type of tenants that the community wants to see there. So that group could be at the table to help us with that. And then, if a group, understanding that real estate investment takes millions of dollars, or in the case of this project, hundreds of millions of dollars to actually get it to the finish line, and knowing that that takes a lot of financial capacity. We do or are going to leave open the opportunity here for a group that may not be able to come in and just be the owner right away, but could be a potential joint venture partner with us, and maybe would have the option of acquiring parts of the project in the future or whatever. But the idea being that long term, there is an opportunity or multiple opportunities for community owned or community-led organizations to be, the owner of everything in this project. So that's what we're trying to seek right now. Our partners to help us with that, and we've had a lot of interest. I mean, we've had interest throughout this process from nonprofit organizations, corporations, and others that have reached out and asked for help, ways to help. And so we're kind of using this process as a way of consolidating all of that interest, and then trying to figure out who is the right groups to bring to the table for these different parts.
One thing we can do now is let people know, if you're listening or watching this, how you can plug in. If you're going to express your interest, what should they do?
Yeah, it's the website is Upper Harbor MPLS. I can put it in the chat too. I'll just put the direct link.
Oh, just say it though. Just say it so people can hear it from you as well.
Let me make sure I get it right then. Because it is Upper Harbor MPLS.com/UHT-redevelopment. And again, I'll put the link into the chat, but that's where you can go download all the documents
Mhm.
for the expression of interest, and kind of understand. It provides a lot more detail. You can read the coordinated plan there. You can read the years of documents and things that we put together for all the engagement and meetings that we've done. But that's I'll send it here, and yeah, we'd like to hear from everybody who has interest in different parts of this project. So we're trying to leave no stone unturned here.
You mentioned how big a deal this is. I recall as a reporter watching and reporting on the Holman project. I don't know if you remember that at all. Holman Field was the old projects, Sumner Olson and Glenwood Lindale projects that were by court order disassembled because the evidence, they were a good idea at the time, but the evidence over time indicated that this was a public failure and not intentional but effective concentration of poverty and of redlining. Back before that was kind of a public buzzword, but the consequence of it was that a concentration of poor Black and brown and poor white people in North Minneapolis in the projects. And so as part of a national move, our city was able to get federal support to disassemble the projects and to build market rate and affordable and new housing. And that was hailed as the biggest development in the history of North Minneapolis. And I'm thinking that your project may be even bigger than that. So I raise that to ask you to put in perspective how massive of an investment this represents. And I'm thinking the bigger the better, because bigger and better both mean, to me, the promise of sustainability. And if there's an inclusion that's intentional, it means figuring out how we support homeowners and renters becoming homeowners, and schools and arts organizations and small businesses and manufacturers and startup businesses and incubators. All these things that are related have a stake in the success of this venture and have a right to both bring their great ideas and their hopes, but also to expect to benefit, because that's the American way, I believe. So describe this picture again and give our viewers and listeners an idea that how this thing unfolds in your own mind's eye. And Dana, you do the same from your perspective as a partner in that, if you would. I love good stories. So I want you to tell a story that gets me excited about what I'm going to be seeing unfold.
Yeah, well, I'll start, and I think, I think you've hit on the crux of the biggest challenge, at least, or one of the biggest challenges that we've gone through with this process is, and I would say for me, I had a mental shift a few years ago, and I don't remember the community member that said this, but when we were showing a lot of pretty pictures of the project and renderings and things that it would look like, I quite frankly just could not understand why people weren't getting excited about it. And one community member stood up at one of our meetings and said, we don't care if it's $1 billion that you're going to invest in this site. She said, we don't see ourselves in those pictures. And so, therefore this, everything you're showing us is scaring us more than anything, because it's going to lead to accelerated displacement or gentrification. And that for me, that moment was a very, I would say, trajectory changing moment in my mind about having to, kind of stop and rethink how we're approaching this and making sure that we are doing the right thing. And the challenge with that is that we want this to be a project that balances aspiration and really what the Northside communities want for their future, but also provides, addresses kind of current needs and current challenges. So, affordable housing, for instance, affordable housing is absolutely something that's needed in many neighborhoods right now, especially north. However, the end goal is not for everybody to get into affordable housing. The end goal is for, people to live in affordable housing as long as they need to, but to build enough wealth to make a down payment on a home and be able to then build equity in the home. So, and so every single thing that we're doing with this project, I think, is trying to address one of those kind of current needs or current community priorities, but also leaving some room for the aspirational stuff to still be part of it, so that this is a place that people are excited to come to and inspired when they're here. And so, some kind of specific ways that we're doing that with our housing are to have truly affordable rental housing that we're doing in partnership with Devin George, but then to also provide some affordable home ownership options. And they may be, ground floor townhomes in the project or whatever, but the ability to, rent more affordably, and then over time maybe move into one of the home ownership options where you could build equity. When we think about the commercial spaces and who will occupy those spaces, we could just put a company in that will, promise to hire, 25 people, 50 people, 100 people, whatever it is out of the neighborhood. And those are great jobs, hopefully, high paying living wage jobs. But we're also saying, well, what if, are there ways that we can work with or help build capacity for Northside entrepreneurs? Because a Northside entrepreneur is going to hire exponentially more people, than maybe one company just moving in and taking that space. And so how do we create access and resources and things for entrepreneurs to come in here so that they can grow their businesses and hire more Northsiders? And, then it's not just, hey, we created 50 jobs on this site. It might be we created 500 jobs by helping, business owners expand their business. So, it's about really rethinking kind of every single part of the project, the land use, the program, the how the who will occupy these spaces, and then what benefits they're going to provide back to the community, and trying to make all this tie in a way that, like I said, addresses a current need, but also creates an opportunity for a brighter future and those aspirations to be part of it as well.
Dana?
Yeah, I think Brandon said it perfectly, but just adding on for a second, this development has the opportunity to take 48 acres of heavy industry. Right now it's trucks and it's gravel, and that's about what's there, and to turn it into this not only green space, so public space to come and actually enjoy the river, in the neighborhood in which you live, to not have to travel out to always do awesome things, but it's an opportunity to go down to the river, to fish, to picnic, to have amazing recreational experiences, but also really a launch pad. So any kid or any person from North with a dream can use this development to test it out and to make their dream happen. It has all of the elements. It's got the space, it's got the customer base, it's got the public and private investment. And so really, I think if it were a complete success, if, there's, 100 entrepreneurs who maybe have an idea, but don't know how to realize it, or don't have those assets, or, maybe they have space, but they can't seem to get the customer base or people to actually come and try it. This development kind of offers the perfect combination of resources and assets to really take ideas and dreams and turn them into reality.
What's your background, Dana? And tell me something about First Avenue's background. Obviously, your institution, your flagship, I call it the flagship, is a national treasure for all kinds of good reasons. But I'd love to hear it from you. What do you think about what you've done as a business organization? And I'd love to hear your personal story as well.
Yeah, so I didn't grow up the daughter of a club owner. My father was tangentially involved in First Avenue. He kind of assumed ownership and then got sick. And my background is in TV and film production, like an art school dropout. And so I was a development production executive at VH1, and my dad got sick, and I came home, and it was right, in the middle of opening the depot. So I had no real hospitality experience, but had to open this restaurant and just kind of learned everything on the fly. And, growing up, I always loved.
And for people that don't know, it's called the depot. It was the old bus depot, right?
Yep. First Avenue the building was built in 1937 as the Greyhound bus station.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Greyhound moved it across the street in 1967, it kind of sat there empty for a couple of years until Alan Fingerhut, I think, drove by and was like, hey, this would make a cool club. It was around the time of like the Fillmore and Bill Graham and kind of live music as industry was starting to pop up. And so I started operating First Avenue around 2010 and just really fell in love with it, fell in love with the people, the local music scene. You know, we kind of pride ourselves on, you know, either adding local openers to the touring acts and giving our local musicians a launch pad by either connecting them with national agents and managers or trying to get them radio play and trying to like really build up the local scene, which we have, you know, for decades. And Minneapolis is one of the most consistently highly rated music scene in the country outside of LA, Nashville, and New York. And so that was really our ethos. So we're, you know, committed. We like to be able to take an artist's career from their very first show in town all the way up to the Palace Theater at 2,500 capacity. We do the outdoor shows at the Surly Festival Field, and we, you know, started learning how many Minnesotans in summer want to be outside and how magical that experience of live music and, you know, friends and community can be.
You have any favorite musician or artist stories, things you're dying to tell somebody that you saw or heard or experienced?
Let's see. Well, we're rebuilding our green rooms right now, but before the green rooms had bathrooms, Tina Turner was playing. It was the Ike Turner Experience, and we did not have a bathroom, so Ms. Turner had to pee in a bucket behind the stage. That's one of my favorite stories. U2 was playing their first tour in the country, was in the entry and wrote October Sky while they were like right before their show in the entry. What else? I mean, obviously Prince.
Prince,
right.
Prince. Yeah, Purple Rain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And Brandon, what's your story? You've got a connection to music as well. That's what I know, that people might not know about you, but I think it's a wonderful story. Talk about your own personal background, how you ended up being a developer, but you didn't start there.
Yeah, my original goal, and it's still my goal, was to have my own record label someday. So when I was back in college over 20 years ago now, actually moved out to LA for a time to work in the music industry. I worked for a brief period with Def Jam Records out there, and then started doing like management of a couple of local artists out there. And but for the fact that I just ran out of money, Dana knows how expensive it is to live in Los Angeles, especially doing it as a college kid on a really no salary. And so after I kind of ran out of money, or did run out of money, I came back and finished my degree here, and then got into development after that. But I mean, I always had a passion for real estate and real estate investment and just, city building. And so it was kind of a second love for me. But yeah, music is definitely my first love, and hopefully someday I can get back into it.
Well, I hope that this is one of the pathways to make that materialize again. I think that, kind of the whole world is open to us right now. And what it simply requires is courage. Both of you bring plenty of that in your personal careers and in your business careers. And I think that as you collect and collaborate with other people, equally courageous and visionary and committed, people with fire, who want to make things happen for themselves, but also still committed to changing the world, making it better, being successful. I think that that's the beauty of the opportunity. It's also the beauty of having to deal with things that scare us. The scariness of the pandemic and the scariness of the social justice changes that we're looking at. I mean, things are not going to be the same. It's going to be different. But understanding that and believing that therein lies a pathway to greater opportunity, I think is one of the keys to build this and to move it forward in the right way. We're about done with this interview, but you guys are going to be on with me again next Tuesday, I think. You and perhaps some other people too. And the reason we want to do this is to make sure that we've extended our platforms, because we think your work is critical. It's important. We think our communities are important, and our presence is critical. And so whatever we can do to broaden the interface between you and the publics we serve, we want to do that, and we're pleased to do it. And we hope that it is meaningful to you. I think it's meaningful to the people that read my newspaper and hear me on social media and the radio. So next Tuesday's program will actually be a broadcast live plus social media broadcast on the Tuesday version of Conversations with Al McFarlane on KFAI 90.3 FM. I'm looking forward to that. Any other questions or any other things? What do you want people to ask you about the project or about music, Dana? What question have you been looking to answer, but nobody's brought it to you yet?
Oh, I can't think of a single question that hasn't been asked, but I think the ones that really, like that Brandon mentioned, there were a couple from the early community meetings that really led the project to be reframed, that were really pivotal and really key. And those are my favorite, the ones that really challenge you and make you look at the world, in a different way, in a better way, a more progressive way, but I just, if anything, I hope people, close their eyes and imagine a world where this live music exists, for free, inclusive, community focused and minded, and imagine a time that exists for Minneapolis. And I think you won't be able to imagine Minneapolis without it. And so that's kind of the questions I hope leads to, of like, okay, how do we make this better? What improvements can we make? What else can we do to make this, function the way that it needs to function for the community?
Dana, do you see Minneapolis emerging or continuing to emerge as a music capital of the world like it did? It kind of did it, not so much with Prince, but as Prince grew and his renown exploded. I don't know if stuff changed underground here, but, and I can't really picture the relationship between the aura and the artist. Right, but they're both there. How do you see Minneapolis happening? Because is there a sense that things died down after Prince died, or things just took a different direction? What do you see coming out of our community in the future, arts-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard living in a world without Prince, right? I didn't really know him personally, besides a couple like short meetings, but like I miss, knowing that Prince was out there and existing in the world. And Prince was so. I don't know if there will ever be another Prince in Minneapolis, because he drew people to him, like Paisley, like artists would come, they'd play a show, and then they'd go out there and record all night. And he just had like, he was the artist that he never left. He showed people that like, you can get big and you can stay here. Right. But I do think like, we just had a band in the entry, all local, sold out band, even, with with COVID fears and, confidence issues, like, and there was this opening band named Ev, and like blew everybody away, like a bunch of 18-year-old kids. And it was like that moment where it's like, oh, live music is eternal. Always. There will always be bands up and coming who just like need that one shot, and they need those, 10 people in the audience to tell their 10 friends and to start to build and build a career around these shows. And so what's really unique about Minneapolis is that we always have this amazing creative class. Yep. And I remember Lizzo used to say, like, she was from Houston, but she was on a show in Minneapolis and the energy was so amazing. She's like, I have to move here. And what's really special about our energy here is that people collaborate and they work together. That's really unique. In other scenes, you have like the rockers over here, metal here, hip hop here. But in Minneapolis, everyone works together, everyone collaborates, and it allows every artist to like really grow and develop outside of their own silos. And I don't think that will change. And I think that's part of the reason why we always have this emerging class of artists. We have a really open attitude, and you have really established producers who are dying to work with the new faces. And so it just keeps like progenerating this amazing creative class here.
I saw the Marley Boys down at First Avenue. That was a great show, and had a lot of great music experiences down at First Avenue. And I'm glad that you're managing and growing the Fine Line, because that was a favorite place for my family. My brothers Wayne and ipso facto, but they held court there for a number of years as a leading reggae regional band. And so there are places that mean a lot to a lot of people for all kinds of reasons. And I'm glad to see that, again, the world is opening up again and that you're part of making it happen.
We have the Whalers coming at the end of August.
Yeah, let's do some promotion right now. What else is coming up soon? What else?
I'm looking. No, I just remember that one because that's like on my personal calendar. I was like, gotta be there for that show.
I'm going to introduce you to a band in fact, when this, maybe Kelvin, if you're listening, who's behind the scenes, pull up the music of Phil McFarlane and Earthcry, and we'll close the show with an Earthcry tune. I'm doing this just for you, Dana, because they're going to be coming here, I think, at the end of the month and playing over at the Pimento Club over on it's a reggae band out of Kingston. That's my cousin, and but they ought to be connected to you and to the opportunities that you can open for them. Well, with that, any other questions or comments? Brandon, any other thing you want to say right now? And we can regroup, and I'll have more questions or some of the same questions when we talk again Tuesday for a different audience. But I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I appreciate the opportunity, Al, to be here and continue to talk about the project, and appreciate you've asked hard questions to us too over the years, but you've been supportive of trying to get the right thing done here, and so appreciate all the time and
when we talk Tuesday, I like to focus on the timelines. So because we've been talking for a few years now, and it'd be great to be able to fix as much as you possibly can in the public mind when they can see brick and mortar and roads and begin to do the things. So Calvin, if you're there, why don't you close the program out with music from Earthcry, if you have it. If you don't have it, you can play obviously Ryan, or play Sounds of Blackness. We opened with Gary Hines and Sounds of Blackness. Time for Reparations, timely, great tune, and a great example of Minnesota talent as well. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And Brenda, I'm hoping that Kelvin's going to be there to bring the music up, but if not, we can just go ahead. Good conversation. I enjoyed this interview, Brenda, and hope it's good information for you. These are leaders in community, in the business community, and the project we're talking about is a major, massive undertaking. And it's one that the city has said, as I indicated, that will have, from the city's own mandate, equity at its heart, at its core. So
they sound serious about it. So
they are serious. Are serious, and they're both credible organizations and individuals as well. So I'll tell you what, I don't know if we're going to have Kelvin closing with music, but I'm going to sign off right now. And thank you, Brenda, as always. And thanks to our viewers and listeners, viewers on YouTube. If you like this, subscribe to the channel. Support us by checking us out at Black Press USA, or checking us out on the Insight News or Al McFarlane Facebook pages. We're here every day at 1 o'clock, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Have a good
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with your bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
way. Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
Of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough.
Of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough. All the money you're making. We've had enough. No more life gets taken. We've had enough. This is the proclamation. We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many.